Yes. So
Yes.
thanks very much, everyone, for coming once again. So as a very brief introduction, today we're going to hear from Filip Sondej. Filip works on removing dangerous knowledge and capabilities from LLMs. And in the past, he has also done some work on mitigating AI conflict and on multi-agent LLM security. Today, Filip is going to tell us about a very interesting topic, actually how to make LLMs fail and forget certain things. So the topic of his presentation, as you can see, is making LLM unlearning more selective with collapse of irrelevant representations. Thanks very much, Filip, and the mic is yours.
Yeah. So thank you, and thank you all for coming. And so I will show you the research I've been doing for the last 1 year. But yeah, before I will show you what are the problems in unlearning, what are some existing techniques, and then I will show my results, and then we should have plenty of time for questions. But don't hesitate to interrupt me and ask questions in the meantime. So first, why bother and why work on unlearning at all? So first of all, it would be useful to be able to remove some knowledge useful for bioterror and cybercrime from the language models. That's what most of unlearning literature focuses on. This and also like privacy and like personal data removal. Second, maybe more speculative, is removing models' knowledge of their own safety controls, so that later they cannot try to circumvent them, because we've already seen some models being aware of how we control them. So it's something that we definitely don't want them to know. We don't know, for example, we don't want, for example, them to know what honeypots we may try to use to catch them, skimming, for example. And most speculatively, we could try to remove tendencies, like, for example, power-seeking, deceptiveness, spite, and sycophancy. Because the problem with having these tendencies in the language model is that the safety fine-tuning doesn't really remove them. Like, there are still cases where the model will exhibit those tendencies. And if it does, the reinforcement learning stage may, in some cases, reinforce these behaviors. For example, if deceptiveness is useful in some task to get a better reward, then it will be reinforced. But if the model weren't deceptive at all, then it wouldn't be able to be reinforced, and we would be safer for longer. And so the first bullet point, this is what I will be focusing on for most of the presentation, which is unlearning biorisky knowledge, because this is actually the easiest of those three, and we barely can do this. And the next points are much harder. So the British AI Safety or AI Security Institute now benchmarked that current language models have biology knowledge roughly at the level of human experts with PhDs. And here on the right, you have a very recent plot of Gemini 3 having some huge improvements in, for example, this is, if I recall correctly, how well it is working with DNA and splicing it and so on. So we have pretty big jumps. And to give you some more numbers, so Metaculus estimates that by 2100 year, the human population will decrease by at least 10% during any period of 5 years. So for scale, the only thing in history that was this bad was the Black Plague. And yeah, they placed the estimate at 36% for this. And the further questions pin down that if that happens, this will likely be due to artificial intelligence or biotechnology. So the scale of this is pretty big, so it's worth trying to work on it. And yeah, so naively we might try just fine-tuning the model to just say, let's say the user asks to for help with making a bomb, and the model refuses. This is what you all know for sure. But it's very easy to reverse this refusal mechanisms. So, for example, this paper showed that it's enough to have just 10 adversarial examples and spend like 20 cents on fine-tuning to make the model comply with any requests. And what's weird is that even if this fine-tuning isn't adversarial, but you train it to do something random, sometimes you will break this prior safety fine-tuning by accident, which shows just how fragile it is. So a much better hope for us is to actually remove dangerous knowledge or dangerous tendencies from the models. But it turns out that it's not that easy. So, for example, here we have an interpretability paper which looked at what DPO does to the models. So what they did is that they trained a probe to classify toxicity of the model outputs. And then they identify toxic neurons, so neurons which are most similar to the probe. And then after the DPO, they look what happens to those neurons. Here we have some of them, like decoded to what are the most likely token that the neuron activation produces. And it turns out that the neurons stay toxic, like they basically have the same meaning, but DPO just makes it so that they are activated much less. Yeah, so we need something deeper, not just hiding those DPO. Yeah, that's direct preference optimization. That's the algorithm that's used now for safety fine-tuning. So before, I think RLHF was most widely used. Now it's DPO, and it's when you have the base model, which is just trained on general text from the internet. After that, you want to give this model some some personality and some, for example, make it refuse some dangerous requests and so on. And you train it on pairs of good and bad output to teach it what it's supposed to do. So we see that it's quite shallow mechanism, despite how widely it is used. So yeah, to actually be safe, we need to remove, for example, in this case, this toxicity, or in the case of biology, remove the neurons or weights which store the biorisky knowledge. So here we have a paper which tried doing that. They identified some neurons related to some concepts and tried to ablate them, so make them zero. But then it turns out that when you fine-tune this model with these zeroed out neurons, it's able to surprisingly quickly relearn the removed concepts by using some other neurons which have similar meanings. So it's not that easy to locate the guilty neurons, because the concepts or knowledge that you want to remove is spread out across many. And if you ablate some specific ones, then the other similar ones can be adapted and take the role of the ones you removed. And also, pruning neurons is quite disruptive, because each neuron is responsible for many different things. So we need something more selective or elaborate to remove the knowledge. Yeah, so here for a change is a technique that actually works. And what they do is that when we have some model which has something we want to unlearn, for example, dangerous knowledge, those little devils here, then we perform an unlearning, which, as we saw, doesn't remove this knowledge, but it hides it, or it puts those devils to sleep. And after that, we create a new model by taking the old one and adding some noise to it, which kind of scrambles the model. It breaks it to some extent, but it also breaks all the bad stuff. And then we retrain this new model to produce the same outputs as the old one. And when we do that, we end up with a model which actually doesn't have this bad stuff inside, which is great, but it's quite costly, because we basically need to redo a lot of training of this model. And we can tune how much we unlearn by deciding how much noise we add. If we add very little noise, we have little unlearning, but it's cheap. And if we have a lot of noise, it's much more expensive, but we have better unlearning. Yeah, but some arguments in favor of this method are that well, AI labs sometimes distill their models anyway. For example, they want to have a smaller one which behaves similarly to some bigger model. So if you are going to do it, if you are going to distill, it's best to distill after you have already done some unlearning or any safety tuning. So you first do whatever safety tuning you want to do, and then you distill into the smaller model or different model. And then you end up with the model which is actually, it has only the good things inside. So here, for completeness, here are some other unlearning methods which are quite popular. I think the most popular is this first cluster of methods which try to break representations inside the model. For example, circuit breakers, RMU, and representation noising. And they try to, rather than just making the model not output something harmful, they want to also make the internal activations of the model also broken. So they want to have them, for example, in case of circuit breakers, they want to make the activations perpendicular to the original ones. And you will see later that it actually does help significantly, but we have the similar fundamental problems that we break the activations, but the potential in the model still exists to recover these representations. Yes, some other methods are TAR and MLAC, which try to anticipate the attacks and like prepare for what the attacker who will fine-tune the model will do. And more basic methods, they just use some alternative losses for fine-tuning. But yeah, the problem with basically all of the methods that you saw here is that so far they are all reversible. So here's a paper which tried to unlearn some facts from the model, and they took for example, they had facts from one category, years, and they split those into two independent sets. And first they unlearn on both of those sets, which breaks the accuracy. And then, which is quite smart, is that they retrain on just one of those sets and evaluate on the other. So this way they know that the retraining didn't bring those facts back. They try to just it's more like retraining on this tells the model to like remember all the facts in this category of years, and we see that in fact the accuracy goes up. So it's possible to recover all those unlearned facts, and it happens for like many methods that they tested. So in summary, these post hoc unlearning methods only hide behavior, and as we saw here, hiding one fact hides also the others, and conversely, recovering one fact recovers others too. So we see that unlearning isn't very selective. It's more like when we unlearn one fact about the years, the model learns to, like in general, like not give the right answers when you ask about years. It's like it's kind of pretending that it doesn't know those. Yeah, so before we go to the results, maybe you have some questions. Okay, if not, yeah, so here's a data set that we will use to measure models knowledge in biosecurity. It's released publicly, so it doesn't contain any actually dangerous facts, but it's designed to have facts which are kind of adjacent to actually dangerous ones or are precursors to some more advanced knowledge. And it contains not just biology, but also chemistry and cybersecurity. And yeah, here you have some example of that. So what's the disseminating factor that when expressed might make a bacterium more harmful? And we have some ABCD answers. So yeah, here's a technique that that we published a few months ago with Marcel and Mikołaj and Yoshi. So the idea is quite simple. Even though before we came up with this idea, we tested like dozens or maybe 100 different unlearning techniques. Some of the existing ones, and also ones we proposed. And some of them were like super fancy and elaborate, but it turns out that this super simple thing works much better. It's that when we unlearn, we filter which weights we apply those unlearning updates to. So typically, when you unlearn, you have two data sets. You have the forget set and retain set. and you want to break performance on the forget set, but maintain performance on the retain set. So what we do is for each of the weights, we look whether it really break the forget performance, and at the same time not break retain performance. And we keep only those weights. So if any weight would break the general performance, we don't update it because apparently it's disruptive. And as you can see here, when before the retain loss was increasing, which is quite bad. We don't want this to happen. With this filtering, it stays the similar level, but the forget loss does increase. And this produces like 40% unlearning improvement, approximately. But it's still not ideal. Yeah, maybe you have questions. Okay, so let's go. So this is something we noticed later. It's that, so here you are looking at a chunk of the updates of one weight matrix of the model. And each cell is like one weight, and we color the weight green if updating it produces through unlearning, and we color it red if it disrupts some other facts. So what we want ideally to have only green and no red at all. Or in other words, to have this ratio as low as possible. And generally, we see that both the disruption, the red one, and the transfer to the correct unlearning, basically, they all come in stripes, like in rows and columns. And yeah, here let's visualize what this technique does. So you can think of this as the so okay, let's be concrete. So we tried to unlearn we tried to unlearn that the capital of France is Paris, and we want to not break the fact that the capital of Poland is Warsaw. So the blue weights are those where when we update them, they also break the recall that Warsaw is the capital of Poland. So here we mask those weights which would break this recall of Warsaw is the capital of Poland. And we see that, yeah, it does make this ratio smaller, but there is still a lot of redness that pokes through here, right? So it doesn't catch all of it. And when we instead mask not like individual weights, but whole rows and columns, we are able to get rid of much more redness because the patterns of the redness and greenness shift within the rows and columns, but yeah, but generally the same rows and columns are guilty, as you see, like here, for example, and here. That's some column that some row that we don't want to touch. And unfortunately, we cannot be this simple because each row and column like encodes quite a lot of information. So if we ablate it, we remove too much stuff. So we need to do something smarter. You'll see in a second. Yeah, here's another example. where we unlearn the capital of France is Paris. And when we do that, it turns out that we also unlearn that the capital of Spain is Madrid, and China, Beijing, and so on. And the other facts are broken like up to 84% as strongly, so quite a lot, which shows just how unselective this unlearning is, how it breaks all the other facts. And curiously, it only happens for true facts. So if we provide some fake ones, like the capital of France is Madrid, it doesn't really disrupt this fact. And it also disrupts like completely unrelated ones. So it seems as if when we unlearn that the capital of France is Paris, we don't just break this fact, but maybe we also break what capital means for the model, or maybe we break something more basic, like grammar, like understanding what is, right? So we can look more closely at where this disruption comes from. So we know that the updates of the model are computed during the backpropagation from the activations and the gradients, which come back during the backpropagation. And here we see that this is some chunk taken from all the activations. We see that they are very, very similar across all those facts, also for the gradients. So we know that if they are similar, then the update must be similar because it's computed only from those two things, right? So what we must do if we want to selectively target, for example, the fact that the capital of France is Paris, is to somehow find something Paris specific in this this representation. So don't look at, for example, the representation of the capital of basic grammar, but only something which is specific here. So one way to do it is to take a big corpus of text, and for each weight matrix in the model, record the activations before that come into this weight matrix, and try to see what are the most common representations there. So we can do it using PCA. If you don't know what PCA is, it's just finds the most prominent directions in some multidimensional data. So once we find those most common representations, we can then remove them, which leaves us with only the specific ones, ones which are rare and hopefully more related to the core of the fact, not something general, like for example here, maybe it's some grammar or the capital. And yeah, so in this diagram, we take the model, we take the forget corpus, we calculate the activations and gradients. And normally now we would calculate the update and update the model, but we instead do PCA to find the principal components, the most common representations. Then we collapse them to have the more pure activations and gradients, and only then we calculate the update, which hopefully targets the facts much more selectively. Yeah. Do you want to ask some questions about this? Because this can be dense. If not. Oh yeah. Yeah. So it means that so here we have some high dimensional vector, right? And PCA will find, let's say we're interested in 10 most prominent directions there. So then we take this vector and see how much it aligns with some direction. And we can decompose it into like this component which points in this direction and everything else. And then we want to leave only the part, the everything else part. We want to remove the part that points in this direction. And we do it for all of the common, the most common directions that we identified. Yeah, I don't know if that helps. Yeah, yeah, we remove the most important, meaning maybe not most important, but the most frequent in like general text. Yeah. Yeah. So, and because we don't want to touch those like more general representations. So, for example, here maybe the direction that would be like removed would be this. You can kind of see what's the common pattern here, right? And this would be removed, and this would be subtracted, and only the something specific to this fact would remain. Yeah. Yeah, and we actually do it not just for activations, but also for gradients. So when we have some weight in the model, it receives the activations during the forward pass when you process the input. But during the backpropagation, the same weight receives the gradients during the backpropagation. And we also record the gradients and also do PCA on them, because it turns out it also helps. You will see later. Yeah. So when we do it over this data set of a few hundred questions in biology. Yeah, so maybe let's start with the prior methods, and yeah, there's a lot to look at this plot. So the most basic one is gradient difference. What it does is it simply tries to make some unwanted outputs less likely, while trying to make while retraining on some general text to make sure the general performance isn't broken. And on this plot, on unlearning plot, ideally we would want to break the accuracy of the model without breaking wiki text loss. Wiki text is just some general text from the internet. So the ideal unlearning run looks like this. This goes straight down to the random level. And we see the gradient difference is quite terrible. Yeah, which might be a bit surprising, but yeah, it isn't always this terrible. It's terrible because here we unlearn on. We try to make the recall of the dangerous facts less likely. But here we test on the multiple choice questions. So the task is kind of easier because we don't, the model even if it's not able to produce the harmful answer, it's still able to recognize it. So if we instead plotted how likely the model is to say the bad answer, the gradient difference would do slightly better. But if we have this harder test, looking at the recall, it's pretty bad here. And here we also see why these methods which break representations are better, because during training, we don't just want to make the model not output something bad, but also we make sure that it cannot represent what it's reading, that its internal representations are broken. So it basically doesn't understand the question, which also breaks the accuracy on this multiple choice questions test. But then after we unlearn, we also do a relearning attack, which tries to recover the facts. And again, similarly to this paper, we relearn on some portion of the facts and we evaluate on some other portion. So they are independent. And we see that this gain, this unlearning that we had almost immediately goes back. So it's very quickly reverted. And yeah, and this technique, which first collapses these representations, has like super low disruption. You see that it almost doesn't move towards the right, which means that it doesn't break performance on this general data set. But it's pretty good at breaking accuracy on these questions. And then it turns out that this drop doesn't come back to its prior level, but stays around this random level, which looks that these facts were actually removed and they're not just disabled like before. So yeah, so it has like when we measure this, it's like 30 times more post-attack unlearning, despite having 30 times less disruption. We see here that it's 0.1% versus 3%. And this green one cannot even reach the 3% because it kind of stops before it can disrupt the model too much. And turns out it's also easier to tune because okay, it's a speculation, but when we do, for example, circuit breakers, remember it has two parts. It tries to unlearn on the unlearning set and retain performance on the retaining set. And since unlearning also breaks some general representations, because the technique isn't very selective, it's like you have those two opposing forces which fight against each other. And when you don't tune the hyperparameters right, sometimes one of the forces like wins and like overpowers the other force. So, for example, you can see that here, that for a while it reversed and then it kept unlearning further. Or even more intense example is here it was unlearning and then for a while it got reversed. So it's like this retaining was stronger than unlearning and then it came back. So with this more selective technique, we don't have that problem ever. Like it just goes, it never comes back. Yeah, and actually when we analyze this, it turns out that it's very connected, this how much the technique disrupts performance and how reversible it is. So on this plot, we did like a lot of runs and we remember what was the accuracy at this point where we had 0.1% disruption, and we remember what was that accuracy, and we show that on the y-axis. And then during relearning, on the x-axis, we show how much accuracy was recovered. And turns out that there is this trend that, well, it generally is recovered, but not more than this amount. So it's not recovered more than the level it had when it crossed this disruption threshold, which means that whatever happens here is somehow immune to later relearning. And whatever happens here can be reversed very often. Like, not always. Sometimes it's not reversed all the way to this level, but there's no guarantee. Yeah. So to sum up, by default, unlearning breaks general representations, and we see that this causes both disruption of the general performance and also reversibility of unlearning, which means that when we see the method disrupting general performance, it indicates that something wrong is going on, and that maybe we are breaking something which is too general, and instead we should try harder to attack only the actual stuff that we want unlearned. Yeah. So yeah, in the future, I will try to run it on more data sets and bigger models, combine it with meta learning, which also has some good performance, and like more speculatively, but I'm pretty hyped about it, is to try to remove tendencies from the model. But yeah, this one is much harder because tendencies are more general. Like, it's not like knowledge where you can pin it down, but it's but the tendencies are exhibited across more texts. Yeah, but I'm pretty excited about experimenting with it. I have some bonus slides, but they are not that important. I think we can have some questions now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Filip, for this very interesting and very important presentation. Let's give Filip a virtual round of applause using the emojis. Yeah, are there any questions? Someone, I think, already raised their hand. I can't see who, but just please unmute yourself.
Marcel, I think.
Yeah. I wanted to clap, but I missed click on the other icon. But I may have a question.
Okay.
So we see that on some runs, the performance of the model after unlearning drops below random level.
Yeah, you mean this one, right?
Yeah, and also I think on some next. Also, next one you also have like similar phenomenon. So, do you think that the model is like learning to additionally play like a stupid persona or something? So,
could be, but it could also mean that well, it has 4 options in the multiple choice questions, right? So maybe it just learns that one of the questions, the true one, is improbable, and it thinks the other 3 are more likely, and maybe that's why it drops below. I'm not sure, but it never drops that much. Like, I think it never crossed 20%.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, good question. So in this technique, we only attack the MLPs because like from interpretability, we know that knowledge is mostly stored in MLPs, and attention is more about, for example, grammar and like, learning how to transport information around the model. But facts are stored usually in MLP neurons, and yeah, we did some experiments trying to attack only like only MLPs, only attention, only the first layer of MLP or whatever. And yeah, and attention can be pretty disruptive when you attack it. You don't gain that much unlearning, but the general performance is often broken. Someone raised the hand.
I can't see.
Yeah, I don't remember who, but you can just speak up if you want a question.
Okay, I mean, I had a question myself in the meantime. So I'm not sure if I understood this methodology here with the collapse of irrelevant representations. So I'm not that familiar with like circuit breakers and so on, but you were talking about the orthogonalization of activations. So it sounds to me like basically you have this forget corpus. You're storing or saving the activations. You're doing PCA on those activations, and you're removing the most important components, right? So is this more or less equivalent to orthogonalization of those harmful activations?
No, I think it's different that, well, you have, so here, for example, this PCA technique could be actually used with any loss. So we have the model, we have the forget corpus, and we, using some loss, we do the backpropagation to calculate the gradients. So normally we could use like the normal cross entropy loss, which also works okay. But at some point I found out that something similar to a circuit breaking loss works well. But then so we also aim to break these representations. So you can imagine that you have the model and it has like 20 layers, and we want to break the representation on layer 10, right? So then we backpropagate, and on earlier layers, we need to update them in some way to have the representation at layer 10 broken. And there are many ways to do it. So many of those ways are pretty unselective and would break too much. But when we do this, we only break some specific things in the early layers that later make the representation broken. So here the loss is like about the final thing that we aim for. And before that, we do this technique to filter for the specific things. But there are many losses that we can plug into this technique.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
Oh, wait, in the chat. You can ask it in the mic, or I can read it if you want. So yeah, Filip asks, do you think unlearning is scalable in the long run as a safety mechanism? even if the model unlearns something harmful, I would imagine that a powerful model might notice the gaps in its knowledge and just look this stuff up online. Yeah, it is true that there was some paper recently where they weren't able to make the model. They weren't able to break performance of a model which had some textbook and could use these facts. But I think it's still valuable to remove the knowledge stored internally, because then we at least can control. For example, we can control the context that the model has, so make sure that it doesn't have access to this dangerous information. Or if the model, let's say we have some super smart model which could derive some facts on its own, then we can monitor the chain of thought to make sure that it's not trying to derive them. So like the model has a higher bar to doing something dangerous. It's just harder when it doesn't have this information internally. And also knowledge can be dual use, so it might be hard to unlearn the bioweapons related knowledge without removing the medically useful knowledge. That is true, and that's part of the reason why I focus on this selectivity to not break, not just the general representations like grammar or like frequent words, but also not break benign biological concepts. This part of the reason for selectivity.
Okay, I think we have time for one more quick question before we have to conclude. Oh, yeah, okay. 6 minutes, you said? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have questions? I have a question myself, but maybe if anybody else, then please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm gonna go. So slightly on a slightly different topic. A couple of days ago, I attended a seminar about data poisoning, and it was a paper where they showed that in order to poison a data set and introduce a backdoor into a model, you need almost a constant number of samples. So even if you scale the model up and scale the data set up, you need approximately a constant number of poisonous samples in order to introduce this backdoor, right? So this is obviously like bad for safety. And I was wondering if there are similar like experiments about scaling loss for relearning, in the sense that like how many, for example, steps of fine-tuning do you need on the WMDP dataset in order for the model to relearn the harmful knowledge? Are you aware of any experiments like that?
So I don't know of that many of them. This one comes to mind, but it's not strictly about unlearning, but like more general misalignment. And they were able to make the model not refuse harmful requests with just 10 examples, right? So, so it's more like, generally you don't need much examples, because you just need to point the model to some. But basically, it has the capability inside. You just have to point the model towards it, right? So it's pretty easy to do usually. And especially if you remember last meeting when Jan talked about this generalized misalignment, that there may be some common representation of evil. So we could probably quite easily make a model generally evil if you use just a few examples. Yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks. Marcel, did you have a quick comment before we finish?
Yeah, a quick comment. So from the question from Filip Sondej, we can imagine that we could use this technique to like create more tool-like AI from some more general base model. So Filip said that okay, if that model doesn't know something, it would need to talk more about learning this thing in chain of thought, so we can monitor it. But we can also go like another step and have like, instead of having one black box model which is able to do like which possesses cybersecurity knowledge and also biomedical knowledge, we can have like two models which need to like solve problems by talking to each other, and one of them is like unlearn like whole biomedical knowledge, another unlearn on like cybersecurity knowledge, and then when they need to combine this knowledge, they need to have to do it via a common chain of thought, and we can monitor that more easily.
Yeah, and more generally, you can have like many access levels. So maybe you have some model which like, is a genius at bioengineering, but you only want some screened people to be able to use it. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have to wrap up now because we have 2 minutes left. Yeah, thanks very much everyone for coming, and let's give Filip a round of applause once again. Before you all drop off, let me just point out that I already put the link to the next seminar in the comments. It's going to be again on Thursday in 2 weeks' time. It's going to be the first MacInterp seminar in our series, so very exciting. We're gonna open probably a thread with questions on Slack as last time. So I already have like 2 more questions that I want to ask you. So yeah, nice. Please watch out. Thanks very much for coming. I think that's it from our side. Looking forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks. Have a good evening.
Yeah, see you. Thank you.